All right, so today we're going to be talking about the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, otherwise known as the core teaching of Buddhism. So we're going to get right into it and talk about the Four Noble Truths. And you might see some parallels to naturopathic medicine. There is suffering. There is a cause to suffering. Suffering can be transformed. And one way to transform the suffering is to follow the Noble Eightfold Path. So today we're going to be talking about the Noble Eightfold Path and the 8 components of it. So this is a depiction of the Noble Eightfold Path. You can see that there are 8 spokes to the wheel, and we're going to start with right view at the top and go around and discuss each of them on a deeper level. And one other thing I like to say about this picture is the 8 spokes are connected. So what that means is that when you work on one of the 8 elements of the path, you're actually strengthening all the other 7. So for one example is, we'll talk about right thinking and right speech. How are they related? Well, if we have right speech, or if we have right thinking, we're most likely, as a consequence, going to have right speech. And we'll get into that on a deeper level, what that really means, but that's the cool thing about this path, is that you do one and the other ones get better. And you keep going deeper. It's like a wheel, it spins, or a drill, and the more you practice, the more you engage, you go deeper and deeper into this practice. So we're going to start off at the top, like I said, right view. And right view is a deep understanding of the Four Noble Truths. So in other words, it's a deep understanding of the core teaching. So who remembers the Four Noble Truths? It was on the last slide. Or 2 slides ago, I'm sorry.
There's suffering.
There is suffering.
Suffering can be transformed.
Suffering can be transformed.
There's a cause.
There's a cause.
And you can do it with the
And you can do it with the Eightfold Path. Yep. And I didn't prepare this part about it, but sometimes Buddha, I don't know if that's the right word, but postulates it as a like almost like as a prescription. It's like, or like a medical interaction where suffering is the chief complaint. You know, what's the etiology, what's the cause, and then we could always go into more in depth about all these things, but then the prescription that Buddha would give is the Eightfold Path. Here's the Eightfold Path, and you'll be able to transform your suffering. So, why is this the first one of the 8 discussed? Well, if it's really understanding the core teaching, you would want to know the core teaching before you practice anything else. I was thinking about it, it's like if you want to practice Christianity, you're not going to buy a chemistry book. So, same thing. It's like you want to have this foundation so you could reference it, and you want to have the right book. And then, in sum, the right view, the Buddha said, to have right view is to have faith and confidence that there are people that have been able to transform their suffering. So I think of John Bastyr right away. John Bastyr had faith and confidence in the medicine. If we don't have faith and confidence in the medicine, how is our patient going to have faith or confidence in it? So here and there, I might try to incorporate little naturopathic tidbits. The second of the 8 elements is right thinking. So when I think of right thinking, I think of 3 things: perceptions, literal thinking, and something called bodhicitta. So let's talk about perceptions. I gave an example of, let's say I'm walking, right? And I see a rope. But I perceive it as a snake. And every time I see a rope when I'm walking, I see it as a snake, and I get fearful, and I have all the adrenaline rushing. Even a better example, I see this piece of paper with questions on it in ink, and I'm starting to, adrenaline's rushing through my veins. We do that all the time. We perceive a test as a predator. So that's wrong thinking. Also, literal thinking. Where are my thoughts right now? Are they dwelling on the past sorrows, or are they worried about the future? Or can we just take a moment to smile to this moment? That would be right thinking. And then lastly, bodhicitta. In other words, I would say loving kindness. So in the meditation group, for example, the last minute of our sits, we practice a loving kindness meditation where we intentionally think loving and kind thoughts to ourselves, to the people around us, and then extending it to the world. So those are 3 examples of how to engage in right thinking.
So how do you judge what's right and wrong?
Yeah, they're used as a simple way to express a deeper teaching. I guess.
Because
Yeah.
the example that you gave, where it's like you look at ink and paper and a question, you think, and your adrenaline goes, and that's wrong thinking. But who's to say what's wrong and right?
I know. Maybe, and I'm just going off the top of my head right here.
Yeah, no,
But maybe the Buddha would say that if we do that all the time, we're going to be we're going back to the Four Noble Truths, right? We're going to keep suffering. We're going to keep suffering if we perceive the test as a predator. So if you want to have the prescription to not suffer or transform that suffering, you see the test for what it really is. Piece of paper. Yeah. That's where I'm at least with it as of this second. Yeah. So right speech, when I was doing research on this, I just love this paragraph so much, so I'm just going to read from it. It says, aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I'm committed to cultivating loving speech and deep listening in order to bring joy and happiness to others and to relieve others of their suffering. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I'm determined to speak truthfully with words that inspire self-confidence, joy, and hope. I will not spread news that I do not know to be certain, and I will not criticize or condemn things of which I am not sure. I will refrain from uttering words that can cause division or discord, or that can cause the family or community to break. I'm determined to make all efforts to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small. So there's a lot there, but I just thought each part of that was so profound. I'm just going to talk about maybe 1 or 2 parts that I liked. I liked the inability to listen to others. I go back to naturopathic medicine. If there was a 7th principle of naturopathic medicine, I would say it's listening. So if we can't listen to our patients, it's going to cause suffering. So we could do less harmful acts to the world if we practice right speech and we do deep listening. And I also liked, refraining from uttering words that cause division or discord, or can cause the family or community to break. I think of you, Gino. You don't cause the family or community to break because you practice right speech. So that's an example. So there's more to it. Maybe everyone has a different part that they like, but those are 2 of the parts I like. Right action. Again, naturopathic medicine, first do no harm, basically sums up the first out of the 4 parts about protecting life, or right action, doing no harm. You could just simply put that, and it even goes as far as sometimes with insects. Like you see an insect, right, and we're just so quick to react sometimes to kill it, right? Can we take an extra second or 30 seconds to capture it and let it outside? Like, that would be right action in the Buddha's framework. Practicing generosity, it's giving even when you have little to give, or it's like you want to go on the 5th floor of the school, but the elevator's full, and there's only 1 spot left. Yeah, let someone else go. That's an example. Behaving responsibly. There could be a lot of harm done in the world when we engage in sexual misconduct, whether that be like infidelity or abuse, and they could have repercussions for a long period of time. can be transformed for sure, but it's still, we should engage in right action and be mindful and considerate when we engage in sexual behaviors because there's consequences to them. And then consuming mindfully, again, going back to naturopathic medicine, not ingesting toxins. So we could literally look at that as like toxins, like arsenic in our rice or whatnot, or we could look at it as alcohol or TV programs, films, and my favorite one is conversations too. It's consume your conversations mindfully and be aware of what comes up in conversations and don't engage and practice right action and not ingesting yourself with toxic conversations, whatever that means to you. Could probably go more in depth on that, but we don't need to right now. Just an overview. Right livelihood. I like this one a lot. It's in the ideal world that's practicing your vocation. If you have a vocation, if you have a calling, if you're engaged in that, then that's right livelihood because you're giving your best self to the world with your gifts and talents. Also, right livelihood is deeper than that. Let's say your right livelihood is manufacturing cigarettes, right? Like you love cigarettes and you love making them, you love advertising for them, but it's actually doing harm to so many people. And if everyone stopped manufacturing cigarettes, then there would be a lot less incidences of lung cancer. So that would be wrong livelihood. But it's hard sometimes, especially in this society when there's not that many jobs out there. And sometimes we do maybe work at something that's not in perfect alignment with our values. That's okay, but we should still go in that direction of, maybe I can find another job. Right diligence. I'll just skip to this picture for now. I drew it. It's not the best for artwork. I probably could spend more time on it. But it doesn't need to be complex to prove the point. I like this one a lot. What right diligence is that the Buddha said we have two consciousness, plural, apostrophe. Store consciousness and mind consciousness. So our store consciousness is almost like our unconscious, where we have these, and in this unconscious, we have these seeds. We all have seeds. We all have seeds of wholesome seeds, and we all have unwholesome seeds. And in each moment, we could choose which seed we want to water. So we're in traffic, and we're getting upset. We could water the seed of patience if we're aware. But sometimes we might water the seed of anger, and that's okay. We can water the seed of anger, but just don't water it again. And so it's that practice of like, okay, I watered the seed of anger. Let's not try to water that again. And then you could incorporate these other things that we've learned on how else to remedy the situation, like right speech, like maybe saying sorry if you caused harm with your anger. That would be maybe right speech. So you see how they're all connected. And then when you do like keep watering this patient seed, it's growing into this abundant patient plant. So then you go walk through campus and someone flips you off, you have so much patience. You have this big patient plant bush that it's really not going to affect you because you've been watering the seed of patience with this practice. And it makes me think of neuroscience. It's like the more we engage in a habit, the more that that neural network strengthens. So that's right diligence. we have right mindfulness, but I just felt like showing the example of what wrong mindfulness is, just to give a different way of looking at it. And right mindfulness is everything except this. So when I was doing some research, it said a wobbled mind, a lack of focused mind, forgetting the object in the present moment. So let's say I'm eating an apple and I'm thinking about something 2 hours ago. I'm not really eating the apple fully. I'm playing a game with my friend, and I'm not really there. I'm not really playing the game. I'm somewhere else. or even avoiding experiences. Like, let's say we're meditating. One way of meditating is to allow things to come up and then kind of allow them to go. But if we don't really allow them to come up, we're almost suppressing them. It's not like saying we have to dwell on them, but just seeing them, acknowledging them, and then letting them pass. But if we're just avoiding them right away, then that would be wrong mindfulness. It's almost like suppression in naturopathic medicine. And finally, maybe one of the reasons why I even got into Buddhism to begin with, because I had pretty bad ADHD, was right concentration. I noticed that I felt more concentrative after practicing. So that's a side effect from practicing meditation. But in one sentence, the practice of right concentration is to cultivate a mind that is one-pointed. And there's two types of concentration, active versus selective. So active concentration is seeing things come and go. So it's like we're watching a cloud and we're letting the cloud pass. We're not like craning our neck, like following the cloud, holding on to the cloud, suffering because we want to follow that cloud. That's not active concentration. It's like being there, like a soft concentration. Or like my favorite example from reading the book I'll show you afterwards is it's like a bird over a lake. The bird flies over the lake and you see the bird's reflection in the lake and it's nice and clear. But when the bird moves on from being over the lake lake doesn't try to hold on to that reflection. It lets the bird pass and then you just see the water again. So that's active concentration. We also have selective concentration, which is more single-pointedness. It's focusing our attention on one point. So in meditation, for example, that's one way you could practice. You could focus your attention on a dot. So a dot or the mat, for example. You focus your attention on one thing. And then when you leave that mat, you bring that single-pointed concentration off the mat to real life and you engage with it. So like let's say you're with a loved one, you're really with them because you're focusing that moment on your loved one. Let's say you have an hour with your loved one. You want to be there with your loved one for that full hour. So that's a benefit from practicing that I found practicing and stuff. So that was the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. This is where I got a lot of the content from. It was recommended to me. It's like the go-to if you want to read about all of Buddha's teachings. It's pretty straightforward overall, but it also goes into a little bit more like background, and there are some words that you might not really understand right away. But overall, it's a great handbook for the best one I found so far for what we just talked about, and some other teachings. Like there's so many other teachings of the Buddha, like impermanence, for example. Like you could do an impermanence meditation. Like when I'm with you guys right now, I'm just so elated because I know one day we're not going to be together. That's the teaching of impermanence. So there's other teachings you could find in there, but that's where I got a lot of it from. Any questions?
Knowing you, I feel like I definitely see a lot of these things being done in your life. Like, I can see you striving to live like this, which is really awesome that you like. I'm wondering, like, how, when you strive to live this way, with these things in mind, are you focused on the benefit of yourself, or is there any type of like honoring of something else involved? Is it so? Are you saying is it more of a self practice or more like honoring a entity? I would say I think it's a self and other practice. Okay. So by working on all these things for myself, I'm also working on these things for humanity, right? If I'm deeply listening to you,
and you feel some sort of benefit and healing, then you might bring that deep listening to Sam, and then Sam might bring that to Mel, and so on and so forth. So I see it more of a self-other practice. The more I practice and engage with it, more it helps other. Yeah.